Our guest this month is Peter Bishop, an English-born physicist and IT specialist who discovered the magic of theater later in life when one of the founders invited him to join the new Entity Theater Group. After playing roles in several productions and trying his hand at directing, Peter co-founded the Actors Workout, running a series of workshops that helped actors understand the character and relationships they were seeking to portray and to communicate that authentically to the audience. Peter firmly believes that a director can be successful only if they can create a partnership with the cast and involve everyone in the creative process. So, welcome to the podcast, Peter.
Hi, how you doing?
I'm doing great. Thank you so much for taking the time to do this with us today. So, you had a pretty successful life prior to the start of the new millennium with your rather remarkable involvement in scientific research, regular involvement with sailing, fishing, and other outdoor activities. Yet there was something about your role in the play Alice in America Land and your initial conversations with Danny Strike, one of the founders of Entity, that took you off in a very different direction and profoundly changed your life. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, sure. Alice in America Land really was the first time I took to the stage doing anything. It was quite a lightweight, fun sort of play. It was really interesting to get mixed up in a team of various international. I actually was persuaded by a very good friend of mine, Hans Phil, to go along. He'd seen an advert for English-speaking actor to do an amateur production, and he kept going on at me. I was working with Hans at the time and said, "Oh, you'd be great on stage. You should come and do it." Probably due to my quite sort of open sort of nature. So anyway, I went along and we had some casting stuff there and ended up getting a couple of roles in the same play. The whole thing was a bit mad. Alice in America Land, a film about corrupt politicians and businessmen and stuff like this.
Still relevant then.
Yeah, absolutely. That play will never age as far as that goes. And I had these two roles. I was the Mad March Hare, which was great fun. I really had a lot of fun with that. And the Man in White Paper. I instantly actually in that production learned a couple of very, very useful lessons, early doors, you could say, as a couple of anecdotes. One of them was in the halftime break in between Act 1 and Act 2, someone said to me, "Oh, let's have a beer." So I had a beer. Alcohol and theatre does not mix, I can tell you that. I just had one vice beer, and the whole second act of whatever I was doing just went down the toilet. I mean, that was terrible. And the second one was really quite funny. I had a particular instance where we actually had a young girl on stage who was Alice. She was like 12. She actually sort of makes a comment about Mr. Brown or something like this. She said to me, "Have you seen The Man Responsible?" I think that's what the question was. And I came back, "Oh, Mr. Brown, yes, he's out there." A friend of mine from work had turned up with his daughter to watch the play. So when she said to me, "Have you seen whoever did that?" I said, "Oh, yeah, Uli Steinberg, he's just sitting out there." And she looked at me, this poor 12-year-old girl looked at me as like, "Who the hell is Uli Steinberg, Tommy?" And it instantly dawned on me, you can't go changing the text just like that, warning anybody what you're doing, because the girl was totally flummoxed and it threw her for the next couple of lines. That was two instant things that I learned. One of the interesting things was that came out of that, or one of the great things that came out of the fact Danny did come along to watch and invited me along there to join his group and do some workshop, which is something I'd also not done before. Once I started going with Danny and went along there, then I started doing some real structured workshops and getting to learn what acting really was about and what theatre was about. I had no idea, really had no idea about anything. And so that turned out, that was the big thing. I'm a bit of a learning junkie. So there was two giant mistakes I made in that production to start off with.
So you're off to a good start then.
Yeah.
I understand from a mutual friend of ours that in the first few workshops, you were less than an orderly student.
Yeah, well, it's how do you take that? To be honest, I can be disruptive. But
Well, she also said that you were a bit like a sponge, and everything that was presented to you, you just suck it up and figured out how to make it work. So I guess you were worth putting up with in any event.
At that particular stage in my life, I was in the right place for learning new tricks and theatre. If you want to learn anything new, hey, get involved with theatre because it's all there. If you want to be an actor, a director, you want to work in technical, backstage. I mean, there's so many different of looking at everything. I'll stick my nose into anybody's business to see what they're doing, which is part of the disruptive bit as well, I guess.
Yeah, right. Well, you mentioned trying directing, and I know that you had a rather early experience with co-directing with Danny Strike in Experiment with an Air Pump. Working two directors, it would seem like this would pose some special challenge, both for the cast as well as for your fellow director. Yet you managed to pull this off and learned a lot from us. Maybe you could talk about that a bit.
Yeah, that was really was a great first kickoff for me for directing. Got introduced to Danny and what he was doing. And I guess he also picked up that I would bounce some of that back and ask questions, which is, again, scientific research. It all comes back to that. You ask the question, why are you doing this? How does this work? Now, just thinking about it, quite annoying for Danny in some respects at times, but Danny's a teacher. He's a professional teacher as well as a professional director come actor, but he's also a school teacher. I guess he picked up on that. He's someone who wants to learn. So I'll just keep throwing it at him and see how much he can take. And after a couple of years, he realized, I guess, that, maybe this guy's got potential. Let's see what he can do with, he's got plenty to say about, he's got plenty of ideas, plenty to say. Let's put it into practice and see what we can do with that. But that also turned that first idea of co-directing, not assisting directing, that's a slightly different stage, say down. He was counting, he treated me as an equal, and that really bolstered my confidence, and I can only thank him for that. And we were literally, we was in a school hall, large school hall, which was also a stage at one end, but it was a school gymnasium hall for doing sport and all sorts of things. And it was, due to the nature of the play, it worked quite well because it was working in two time dimensions, 1799 and 1999, and both parts of the play were coming up to a new year and a change of a century. And so it had two different casts. There wasn't a crossover in the cast. So what we actually ended up doing was Danny and I would be literally back to back in the center of the hall. And I'd be looking at one direction and I'd be directing one cast for, say, 1999. And Danny would be looking in the other direction and he'd be directing the cast for 1799. And maybe we'd do that for half an hour and do some stuff. And then we just have a short break so people can get a drink of water or something. Then we'd swap round and we just literally turn around in the hall, still back to back, and carry on with our direction. Due to the acoustics in the hall, I'm actually surprised it worked. When I think about it, there was a lot of good nature required from everybody to do that because the acoustics, everything echoed all over the place. It was a nightmare sometimes. But that instant gave me an insight into the differences in direction, because I'm coming really from totally amateur sort of direction with little experience, let's say, and Danny's there with years and years of experience. So it was interesting, the reaction to the actors to suddenly get a totally different idea on doing something. Danny would have done a certain set combination of something in a scene, then we'd swap round and I'd say, okay, let's do that scene again, let's see what we got. And they'd run through that and I'd say, okay, let's not do that, let's do this, let's change that. What about that? What are you thinking about that? What are you trying to actually get across? And they're like, well, wait a minute, that's not what Danny said. I said, yeah, but that's what Danny said. This is what I'm saying. And Danny was doing the same thing at the other side. Yeah, well, that's not what Peter said to do. Yeah, well, this is what I'm now saying to do. In a way, now I'm further down the road of experience. That, for the actors, actually really, really good, because the whole idea of being an actor in stages, using your own creativity. A director can give you so much, but you're the guy out there on the stage at the end of the day, and you're having to invent a character, invent a situation, and make it look new for the first time. They were getting bombarded in a way with two totally different ideas. Sometimes we have exactly the same idea, and we work on that and develop it further. But they were getting all this two different creative minds working in different ways, and it gave them the opportunity to open doors and see how they could do their bit of acting, for want of a better word, in a different way. So it allowed them to get to the truth, maybe a different truth every time.
Did some of the actors, once they realized, oh, here's a different idea, I can try that, did they come back to you with yet a third or fourth idea to say, well, what about this?
Yeah, sure. It opened up their creative mind, which I've only really just realized that recently. Actually, that was, if I'd have been an actor, if I'd have been one of the actors on stage at that time, I could see, and it did happen with some of them, were getting a bit annoyed, and others were like going with it and really taking it to the 10th level, which was brilliant. In some respects, the play itself produced some really good moments. We had some lovely tableaus with that. The starting tableau to the play was, I thought, excellent.
What I'm hearing in what you've told us is how important it is for trust, the cast, by the directors, by the producer, all of that, and not taking too much ownership of your own idea. Yeah, here's a starting point. You got something better? I'm open to hearing it. Easier to say than to do, I would think. Obviously, the director is responsible for communicating the vision of the play to the actors, recognizing what is a contribution to that vision and what is going outside of that vision requires a lot of self-confidence, I would think, yes?
It helps if you're coming through in all different directions, whether you're the actor on stage or even the director. Especially as a director starting off, you need to be confident in your vision that you've got for the story. As a director, I'd spend sometimes months reading the same play over and over again. Mm-hmm. Making notes and dissecting it and coming up with a vision in my mind's eye of what I can see going on. Once the actor also gets the script, you'd hope the actor would do the same sort of thing as well and get a vision, their vision. But as a director, sometimes you have to be prepared to give up your vision and pass it over to the actor eventually, because at the end of the day, the actor's going to be the one on the stage, and they're the one that has to ensure that the audience is believing what they're doing. I've found that from experience. It's very difficult from my own experience and watching other direct. It's very difficult to get an actor to do something they don't believe in, and that's what it amounts to at the end of the day. And I've seen several directors make that mistake. They're not prepared to give up their vision, and by that they're getting in the actor's face and trying to get them to do something, one, they don't understand. They don't understand the complete complexity of that, say, particular thing they're trying to get them to do. And they don't want to. As another thing, we're just doing Andram here. We're not professionals, not getting paid. So a lot of the time you're working on the goodwill of the actor. Right. The actor needs to be enjoying what he's doing. He needs to understand what he's doing. And he needs to be allowed to bring his own creativity to the role and to the character, because he's the one at the end of the day that's going to be in front of that audience trying to persuade them this man is believable. I believe he's really doing what he is in. He's in a burning fire, or he's sad, he's upset, he's angry, he's anxious, whatever it is.
Mm-hmm. The actors ultimately need to understand that for themselves if they're going to portray it authentically.
Yeah, sure.
Well, communicating what's wanted and expected has been a difficult subject for literally centuries. One of the earliest items of this sort that I'm aware of, at any rate, was by Shakespeare in the play Hamlet. Hamlet was trying to determine whether the king had actually murdered his father or not, and so he had set up a play and offered this advice to the actors: let your discretion be your tutor. Suit the action to the word to the action, with this special observance that you o'erstep not the modesty of nature. For anything so overdone is from the purpose of playing, whose end, both at the first and now, was and is, to hold as 'twere the mirror up to nature, to show virtue her own feature, scorn her own image, and the very age and body of the times his form and pressure. What was Shakespeare saying here? How would you translate that into something that a modern want-to-be director could understand and implement?
Yeah, it's a complicated piece of text. But for me, there is, when he's mentioning things like don't overstep, not the modesty of nature. For example, that piece there, he's sort of, in a way, he's sort of saying don't overact. And that applies actually to the whole text, I suppose, in a way. By overacting, it's making it people can see that you're not being true, and you're overemphasizing the point that you're making, overemphasizing your body language and the motion you're making, or stomping around. Just someone, as an example of different examples of that I've seen for The Woman in Black. It's a very famous horror play. Was two guys were sitting on a box. On a crate. The point of what they were doing was they were sitting on this box, but the box was actually supposed to be a wagon, being pulled by horses. And so they was doing some certain sort of movements there. I mean, you could actually keep bouncing up and down like a foot. What they were doing, they were just adding the right amount of movement, as if they really were in a car going down a bumpy dirt track road, because it's set back in the 1800s or something like that. It was just so believable. And that sort of part of that, with not overdoing things. Overdoing, say, the modesty of nature in that sort of sense, is keeping it looking as it should be and not trying to be too big or too small in some respects. It's just one of those scenes I remember. It was obviously they were sitting in an empty stage, sitting on a box, but they really gave you the impression, and I believed that they were sitting on a car being pulled by horses, and there was a little giddy up there and a flick of the whip, and they were both jigging in time.
So holding up a mirror to nature then was showing that in a way that allowed the audience to suspend their belief that they were just on stage on a crate and actually were on a... Do you think that holding up a mirror to nature might also be understood to be play your role in a way that the audience members can see themselves?
That's often the case with characters. I dare say you and many people, when they've watched different films or watched different comedy shows. I've watched a couple of comedy shows, but some of the things that's going on with this particular guy, the main protagonist, and I've got my wife, Colleen, sitting there sometimes, and she's saying, "That's you. That's what you do."
Oh dear.
And I think that's what the mirror is.
Yeah, and it's a very good mirror, right? Showing all of the wrinkles and blotches, as well as the wonderful spirit.
Warts and all.
Many people would say that the era of modern acting probably began with Konstantin Stanislavski and his work with the Moscow Art Theater Company at the start of the 20th century. He wrote this about actors' creativity. Our type of creativeness is the conception and birth of a new being, the person in the part. It's a natural act similar to the birth of a human being. If you will follow each thing that happens in an actor's soul during the period in which he is living into his part, you will admit that my comparison is right. Each dramatic and artistic image created on the stage is unique and cannot be repeated, just as in nature. Maybe you could talk about this as well. And were there any roles that you played on stage where this was especially relevant?
There's a couple of things relevant to that, I suppose. If I look at it as a generic thing with plays, when you go to watch a play or if you're involved in a play, more so not if you go to watch it. What I've noticed with productions, so with Entity as an example there, we tended to do, say, 3 nights one week and 3 nights the next week. Maybe for a sort of 2-week run, we wouldn't be on every night like a professional show or something like that. One of the things I noticed that seemed to happen was there would be one particular night where everything felt right. The other nights didn't, some less right, some have gone totally wrong for whatever reason. But you get this feeling as an actor, and the other actors get that as well. You get to an end of a particular performance one night, and you come off of that, and everybody knows it worked. Mm-hmm. Everything worked. Yeah. But this is at multiple layers. This is not just the fact that the audience gave you a standing ovation or something like that, because you know that everything felt. This isn't something that you can put in a bottle. You can't write it on a piece of paper. It's just the feeling you get when things go right. And it seemed to happen, so with the standard Entity format of 6 nights on a sort of Thursday, Friday, Saturday type thing, it would seem to happen invariably, maybe on the 2nd or 3rd night, Friday or Saturday night. The other thing about it is the audience know this as well. So this is part of the two-way communication goes on from stage to the audience. And the audience that gets lucky, and they're the night when everybody knows they got it right, really right, and it felt good. The audience know that, and they walk out a happier audience. So you want to do that every night you can. And I had the same thing again with another play called Games, which was about the massacre in Vietnam. Very sad story, very true story, and we did a production for that. And I actually played the role of I was the conscience. I was a physical role on stage, I was a caretaker. But between the lines, or whatever you would call it, I was the conscience of the play. And that had some particular insights for me, because I resonated with the text as an actor. I got the text. I understood it. I knew where it was coming from, and I knew where it was going. And that resonated to the audience every time I did that show. And again, this went to feet. And I've still got the vision today with that. When I was delivering that text, again, to an audience of several hundred people, and you could hear a pin drop. And I can see their faces today because the text was to the audience. It wasn't supposed to be part of the play. It was to the audience. So I'm looking at the audience, I'm communicating with them directly. And you can see people's faces. Jaws were dropping, eyes were big. People were sucked in with the whole text. I mean, that's power. That's power, how you get into people's heads and you can give them an image and you can talk to them.
That kind of experience, along with what you said before, with real laughter, but real connection, it's really addicting, isn't it?
It is. Get people thinking. That's what I like doing as a director. I like to get plays that will get in people's heads. So when they come out of there, they don't just think, oh, that was nice, and walk away. They're thinking, how did that happen? Why was that? You know, geez, how could that poor person suffer that, or whatever, whether it be a true story or even fictional, so it doesn't really matter. Get people thinking.
Well, since Stanislavski, of course, there's been so many other people who have come with their theories about method acting or how to go about creating this convincing performance. I wanted to just go through a couple and just get your comments on each one. You know, are they saying the same thing? Are they pointing to different aspects? One of them is Uta Hagen. In her book, A Challenge for the Actor, she wrote, theoretically, the actor ought to be more sound in mind and body than other people, since he learns to understand the psychological problems of human beings when putting his own passions, his loves, fears, and rages to work in the service of the characters he plays. He will learn to face himself, to hide nothing from himself, and to do so with an insatiable curiosity about the human condition.
I've seen some of Uta Hagen's videos. I still got them somewhere, and I did run through them many years ago. So again, she gives you what I consider to be part of the actor and director's toolbox, more for the actor. And her exercises, they deal with developing the actor's physical destination in the role, physically how he's going to look to the audience, which is body language, basically, and how to cheat body language, which is your body language for you in that situation. And so she's working on the creativity that people's got to put themselves in that situation. And this is what their body would do. Everybody works in different acts, reacts in different ways. You know, some people in danger, you've got the fright or fall sort of idea. Some people run away. Some people just fall over like the fainting goat, or some people stand there and fight. People have different ways of reacting. What she tries to do is she'll recreate physical sensations so you can really feel what's going on, or try and bring things to the stage. That's the sort of point of what she does. It's very good, but at the end of the day, the baseline for what she's doing is method act, and it's using Stanislav's style and process to get you there. But she's very good at it. She's well trained, so can't complain about that. Can't say she's wrong. Can't say she's right.
Well, I think you said it well when you said it's just one tool in the toolbox, yeah?
Yeah, it's a tool in the toolbox. It's not to be ignored. It's certainly not what I'd call the be-all and end-all, and it's not a tool that you should just follow just for that. The actor should have a toolbox of various different tools, which is something that no doubt will come up a bit later in the conversation.
Sure.
But that's where she's at. And the exercises she's got for that are very good, and they work. That's the important thing. Majority of actors probably doesn't work for everybody. That's why you have a toolbox.
Right. Well, perhaps another tool in the toolbox is from Mike Alfred's book, Different Every Night, Freeing the Actor. He writes, the actor manifests our capacity to be vulnerable and daring, sensitive and strong, perceptive and compassionate, to be expressive and to be beautiful. The actor not only stimulates our empathetic imagination, but also reminds us of our inexhaustible potential as human beings. We all have something of everyone else within us. When actors transcend themselves, so will the audience. The purpose of theater is the revelation and confirmation of the breadth, heights, and depths, the multidimensional richness of our shared humanity.
Yeah, that's so, in my mind anyway, so correct. That's what I'm trying to do as an actor or a director, or trying to get my actors to do as a director. I mean, just about everything he says is correct. As an actor, you should be daring, you should be expressive, and you need to be that to get that character formed on stage. The world is a rainbow of characters, but if you start looking at some of the research into that, there is something like 60 or 70 different characters that we all attune to, which I find a bit odd, but apparently that's the magic number that's been designed, with some slight differences in that. We do share each other's characters. I'm a mimic, and always have been, even as a child, especially with accent. I think he's the particular sentences or the paragraph you brought out there with being multi-dimensional richness of the shared humanity. We are a rainbow world with different colors, but we are physically different colors. We've got different forms, we've got different shapes, we've got different emotions, and we've got different ideas. If you can be the master of demonstrating those different facets on stage, you'll be a superb actor, and the audience will believe you.
This element of his, Alfred's advice that we have something of everyone else within us corresponds to a particular challenge that I'm personally struggling with now, which is if I'm playing a role for a character who, for example, a playboy and ignores his wife and is cruel to her, I find it a real challenge to say, okay, how do I find myself in this person so that I can express it? Because the behavior, the lines and so forth are, well, let me just say it straight out, they're abhorrent to me. So what's your advice as a more experienced actor about how to implement that in a way that you can not judge your character no matter what they do?
With hanging on to the character is sort of how that refers to, in a way. I've noticed I've done that as an actor. If I've taken on a particular character sort of role, and that seeps into my private life, I've had noticed. I might even start using some of the words from the play in real life. There's a sort of gone the other way, which is in some respects sometimes can be quite funny. Other times can be just plain stupid because it's not what I normally say. If I was just being me. So my character getting influenced by the words and the character I'm supposed to be projecting on stage. Mm-hmm. And that I found rather odd. And I suppose in a way that's sort of going along the line of method act, what Stanislavski and his acolytes were saying you should be doing as an actor. For the particular case of picking on a character that's totally alien to what you are. That's one of the other tools in the toolbox of the actor. People who are actors and again directors are constantly observing our fellow human beings. We will in our life have come across different people, and you would have come across someone who was similar to that character at some time or another in your life. And so it's recalling the memory of that person, how they did things, how you felt when they were acting in this absurd or alien way, and reproducing where people have done that. There's different stories about that, and I was talking about it earlier with my wife. If you looked at, I've read at different actors' bios and how they do things and what they did and why they did it. If you take that chap on, he got an Oscar for that, for playing Lincoln. But when he took the role on and read the script and was working on it, he turned himself into Lincoln, and he didn't let go of him.
You're speaking of Daniel Day-Lewis, yes?
Yes, Daniel Day-Lewis, that's his name. And he took on the role of Lincoln, and he took on the persona, or his version of Lincoln, in his private life. He took him home. He sat down with the wife and kids, having dinner, getting up there. He was still Lincoln. They were sitting, which is pretty crazy, really. I mean, kids sitting there, and this guy's pontificating, sitting there having breakfast, acting like the president, one of the greatest presidents of the USA, for 3 or 4 months. And it took him some time to get rid of it after he'd finished filming, because he'd keep his acting memory would keep bringing it back again. And he's got to cut that guy off. And there's multiple cases of people doing that. Johnny Depp with his Captain Jack, same thing. He invented the character, and he spent the whole 3 or 4 months being that character. When even if he went into a restaurant, anywhere, he was Captain Jack. Totally crazy. But that's how he kept redeveloping the character, and he was using it outside in the bar, or getting gas from the station, or going shopping. He's still Captain Jack, and he was finding that he could use when he was actually being filmed.
Well, it's probably the stories that give method acting, as advocated by Lee Strasberg, perhaps a bad name. But as you said, it's one tool in the toolbox and works for some people. So more power to them, right?
Yeah, sure. If they can get it to work and get the absolute best out of it, then yeah, sure, go with it. Why not?
Sounds like an Oscar corresponds to getting the best out of it. Yeah. Okay, one more. Augusto Boal, The Theater of the Repressed. He writes, theater has nothing to do with buildings or other physical constructions. Theater, or theatricality, is the capacity, this human property which allows man to observe himself in action, in activity. Man can see himself in the act of seeing, in the act of acting, in the act of feeling, the act of thinking, feel himself feeling, think himself thinking. Kind of almost sounds like a different perspective on what Alfred is saying, or is it something different?
Yeah, I suppose it's part of what Augusto Boal did with his acting. I used several of his acting workshop technique to build trust with fellow actors and things like that. But the background to what he actually did with his theatre is really, really interesting, because he'd take the theatre, he'd be on stage, he would do stage work, but he'd actually take the theatre into people. So he would create theatre on a train and observe the reaction of the people to the theatre on train.
Just to kind of summarize all of this then, this, for example, with Stanislavski and his students went in different directions, and there were a lot of directors who would say, no, this is the right way and that's the wrong way and there's nothing else. Would it be fair to say that your answer to that is it all has value in its place, it's just needs to be part of the actor's toolbox?
Absolutely. Stanislavski originally, he was working with Chekhov, actually. They were both working together at one time. Chekhov went and did his own thing, which didn't become as popular, let's say, as Stanislavski. Strasberg took that on further. Meisner went into a slightly different direction. Adler, another different direction. Laban is another guy from that area. Jung is another one from that area. They developed different things. And what I see on the argument side, saying this is the only way to do things. No, that's let's say that's not the British way. The British acting system, if you like, would use all of those tools. The Strasberg method with emotional memory coming in. Meisner was really big on repetitive line. Keep saying the same line again and again and again in different ways until you mentally and physically, your body found the right way to say it for you. Excellent tool, great tool. Because once you feel right saying that particular word, sentence, even paragraph, and you can feel it in your body yourself that it feels right, the audience know that. And they'll believe what you're saying. And Adler, also the same. They're all variations of the same thing, taken in slightly different directions. But for me, they're all tools. I certainly wouldn't get involved, which seems to me mainly to be an American argument. If I was putting two different acting nations together, the British say they're just tools, and some Americans seem to be convinced, no, you've got to do it the Strasberg way, or you've got to do it the Meisner way, or you've got to do it the Stanislavski way. I don't get that argument at all.
Well, I've heard those kinds of things in workshops here in Munich too. So
yeah, well, people get sucked into that sort of thing. If anything, I believe at the end of the day, it restricts your creativity because you're just in one place. The people teaching stuff are convinced you can reach the maximum of your creativity. Just use Strasberg. I don't believe it, and my experience has not proven that from what I've seen.
Well, one of the important contributions that you, together with Denise Orita, made to the Munich theater scene was the founding of Actors Workout, where you offered workshops to help actors build an open and direct relationship with the audience. What were your objectives? And perhaps more importantly, what did you learn from leading them?
Well, the objectives of Actors Workout were originally to give experienced actors another level of workshop. Denise had been running some workshops for Entity, which has been, I guess it still is a club which has got different faculties, one of them being entry-level people like me, who've never acted before. Mm-hmm. You come in there totally with no experience, knowledge or idea on how to act or anything. And you could start to learn. And Entity has in the past been very, very good at doing that. And it's produced some very fine actors and even directors, as it turns out, as well. The idea of Actors Workout was to give a platform for actors that had already been acting, or maybe some ex-professionals or old professional actors that hadn't acted for a long while, and they wanted to be put in, let's say, a more serious or confrontational place. If you've got people coming in, entry-level actors, I mean, you don't want to scare them to death by some of the stuff you're doing there. It can get quite messy at times because you're putting your finger on different people's anxieties or fears or delights as well, because you're going into a sort of fantasy world. You're never too sure with people you've never met before what their past history is and how that can affect them.
Yes.
But if you're going up to the next level, so you're giving some really sort of serious issues for people to think about, which we eventually did with a showcase. We never actually intended to do a showcase or actually to do a production. It was never part of our plan. It was just to give a platform and an environment where people could push their acting abilities and desire to learn to a higher level. And like one of the workshops we ran with one of the students we had there, we knew her personally anyway, and Denise pushed the element to the girl started crying and broke down. But that was fine. It was done in a trusting environment. She trusted us with what we were doing, and we trusted her, and it got her upset. But it worked out. It got her to where she herself wanted to be, and she wanted to be upset in a way to fully characterize the text that she'd been given, and she needed to get there to that point. So it's that element of you wouldn't want a first-time actor coming in there and beating them up so they start crying because they're not going to come back to that necessarily. You might be thinking, well, this is not what I wanted to do, or this is not where I want to be. But if you're going to be an actor on stage and you want to be more serious about what you're doing, then you have to be this obnoxious person that you was on about, this playboy. You need to be this obnoxious person. You need to go there to get the audience to believe you are that horrible, obnoxious, nasty person. In the case of this example, someone who really is upset and they're crying.
That relates to that earlier question that I asked, I think, about struggling to connect with a character that maybe is very different from me. But that kind of trusting situation you're describing, it sounds like it would be exactly the way to help me discover maybe what I had suppressed that was somewhere buried in my psyche or experience.
It could be something from your past or whatever. I'm not a psychologist, nor is Denise, but we tried to create this environment where you can trust that we'll take you on a journey, and you might go down some black holes or reach some really sort of cloud nine height,
Right.
and you've got to come back down from that. But you need to be in an environment where you can trust to go there and know that you're going to be safe. If people are running workshops and they've never done it before, they don't know what they're doing. And I mean, you can damage from that. Denise has got billions of years of experience in that to be ridiculous, because it is so ridiculous. She's so good at that. I mean, I've learned so much from Denise. It's unbelievable. She's been one of my major mentors in acting, directing, and more importantly, what she's really, really good at is getting the character, getting someone to get to the character according to the text they've got. And she's superb at that. She doesn't even know how good she is herself, but she's good.
Well, you're preaching to the choir here on that one, because I've done some workshops with Denise and I've had exactly that experience, that she just opened doors and let me discover what was there, rather than saying, no, do this, don't do that. It was like, hey, take a look in here, see what you find. And just made all the difference in the world for me.
Yeah, she's very, very good at that. I mean, Danny was very good at the initial stages of coming in as knowing nothing. And he showed me the ropes on acting, on directing, allowed me to develop skills for technical directing, because I've done stage management, lights, and how to deal with people and manage people, and also manage people in tricky situations. It was good for that. If you're talking about real characterization of acting and opening doors is the phrase you use there, Denise certainly is excellent at that. And I've been working with her for several years now, doing the workshops and learning how she does that and aping what she does, and don't have the experience of Denise, but I try my best to do very similar things to what she does, where we both have different features when we run our workshops that I'm really good at and what she's really good at. And so we marry those together to hopefully give a superb workshop experience for people.
Yeah, synergy it's called, I think. Just to kind of tie all this together, because we've covered an awful lot of material, in terms of creating a cast and director partnership, what advice would you give to someone who wants to be a successful director, one who can successfully build this kind of creative partnership with actors that hopefully will lead to a great performance.
Invariably, you're starting off as an actor. It's very rare that someone comes in just as a director, hasn't actually acted on stage. So I suppose as a prerequisite for being a director, it doesn't work in the professional world. It goes somewhere else there. But so there are directors in the professional world never acted. Unlike, say, Clint Eastwood, who's written, directed, produced, and acted, and all sorts of stuff. He's an anomaly, really, for that sort of thing. But down in the amateur world, invariably you come in maybe as an actor, you've even gone to actor training school, or you come in just someone who's never done it before, and you, like me, and you just get pulled in on the off chance by something, and off you go. But one of the first things to do is, once you start acting, watch what the director's doing. Again, part of the actor's toolbox is observance. Observe other people, observe human nature, see how they do things. Well, that applies to the director. Watch a director at work, observe their techniques, see what they're doing. And then the next step up from that would be an assistant director. So you're actually on the inside of what's going on. So you've gone behind the curtain and you're behind the table off stage, and you're working with the director. So you can ask him directly then, why has he done this? How's he come to that conclusion? How's he getting the actor to do what he wants? And then if you're going even further from there and directing your own play, then you need to find a play that you connect, a play that you believe, that you want to show an audience and you want to entertain one way or another. Certainly don't go directing someone else's play. You know, if you say we've been Entity and something come up and said, oh, hi, Roger, we'd like you to direct a play, and we've got this play about, I don't know, some Australian play with people out in the outback or something like that. You've got no connection to it. You've never heard of it. You've read it. You didn't even like it. Do not direct a play.
Yeah, that's clear.
And when you do get the play that you really like, create your vision. What's your vision of that play? What do you want to see happen? What do you want to do to the audience with that? What do you want to do with the actors? One of the things you need to develop as a director is a thick skin, because you're going to get criticism, because not everybody's going to believe in your image or your vision, won't even like what you're doing. At the end of the day, that's where the buck stops. You're the director. You're responsible for what's done on stage. Admittedly, once the actors get on stage and the curtain opens and the audience there, you've lost control. It's gone, because they can do whatever they want.
Yeah.
Your job is to making sure that they develop and produce your vision that you started off with. Be prepared for that vision to be developed and change, because the actors should have the freedom to do that. The other big backup for a director is his producer. You need a producer that buys into the play as well. And that producer is going to keep all that crap off your back. You're directing, you want to be in a creative environment. You don't want to be worried about ticket sales or posters and things like this. Well, yeah, poster not quite, because the poster should be producing an image of your play, a pictorial image of your play one way or another. But you don't want to get too involved in it. You just want to be happy with whatever's done. But all that sort of off-stage stuff of getting a technical director and things like this, you don't want to be bothered with that. You want to be working with actors on stage and getting them create your vision, and be prepared to change that vision, because the actors have got their own creativity. That's your job.
That kind of leads into the question from the other side. What advice would you have for actors, or even experienced actors, who perhaps are in a play with a director that isn't quite as enlightened as you've been describing? What can actors do to support and encourage the director in creating this kind of partnership? And perhaps also not just the director, but other cast members.
Okay, well, first thing I'd say is buy into the director's vision. So you're both in the same place to start off with. But you need to have a mutual respect for the director and also the other actors on stage, the sharing. That's important. As an actor, keep doing workshops for sure, because acting is like a muscle. You need to keep acting one way or another, and workshops will stretch your imagination. So you need to keep doing that. And there's always more to learn, more techniques to learn, and keep those acting muscles firm. Be prepared to do anything that's believable for the character. And that can take you, again, it's opening up doors. Be prepared for those doors to open. When you see the door open, take it.
Right.
Take that chance. Take the risk.
And trust the director, I would suppose, yes?
Well, you listen and trust. Trust is a big thing. Trust you need with the director, and trust you really need with the other actors on stage. Because if you don't trust them, the audience will see that. And if you don't trust each other, you really can do each other damage on stage. You can damage the whole production. So you need to trust where the actors are going, respect each other, and trust each other, and believe in each other. Believe in their characters. Believe your own character. The audience will believe it as well. If you believe it, everybody believes what they're doing on stage. Really believes that. The audience will see that and they'll believe it as well.
Well, that sounds like very good advice for anyone who wants to be involved in theater production, really in any creative capacity. I expect, though, that most of us will not find it so easy to put it into practice. You've made so many wonderful contributions to English-speaking theater in Munich over the years, and I thank you so much for your time and generosity here today.
It's been my pleasure, Roger. Thank you for asking me along, allowing me to give you some insight into the Bishop method.
It's into the Bishop method, right? One more tool in the toolbox, right?
Yeah, that's right.
Okay, so if you're interested in finding out more about Actors Workout, you can contact Peter at pbishop@actorsworkout.eu, and you'll find that mail address in the description that accompanies this podcast.